Regenerative agriculture is really farming and ranching in the image of Mother Nature and systems that create life and build thriving ecosystem. It celebrates Mother Nature's wisdom by implementing practices modeled after the blueprints that she gave us through millennia of evolution. So many things that we would consider each in their own right a global catastrophe, it turns out all converge at agriculture. These are consequences of a destructive system that is managing our land in a way that is degrading that land and spinning off all of these horrible catastrophes. And I didn't recognize that when we started on this journey, but now it's becoming clearer and clearer. And so when we come at this problem saying, hey, this is a solutions-based system, there are so many different things that are able to be addressed through regenerative agriculture. When you stop putting horrific toxins on the land to produce food, you stop having those toxins showing up in waterways and in oceans and in bodies of humans and in breast milk and things like that. When you stop spraying pesticides everywhere, you start seeing pollinators thrive. When you start creating healthy, thriving ecosystems with healthy animals in them, you start seeing more life coming out of that and healthy, thriving humans eating more nutrient-dense food and so on and so on. And so I think when you look at the number of things that we're facing and how force of nature is working with regenerative agriculture to try to produce positive externalities in response to a system that has historically only produced negative externalities. When it comes to a significant moment or impact of things that caused me to jump in and decide this is the time, there was no one singular thing. It was a compilation. It was things mounting up. It was understanding the degree of severity of many of the issues that we've been talking about and seeing how they all stacked on each other, and then recognizing time and again, having opportunities to introduce people to a regenerative food system and showing them, demonstrating, hey, all these seemingly disparate puzzle pieces, they actually fit together this way, and this is what a healthy food system could look like and used to look like, and seeing that a moment, that epiphany, that light bulb click on, and then recognizing that the call to action for them, once they even were aware of the significance of the issue, the journey that they would have to take to educate themselves further and find and source and procure all the different types and cuts of meats or fruits and vegetables or things that they might need in order to implement this in their daily life was so significant that many of even the most motivated people wouldn't pursue it. And so, force of nature was really out of frustration from that reality, saying somebody has to do something about this. Somebody has to not only continue to reach these people that care, that are being misled, that are being underserved with this important message, but then make sure that if they're moved and if they're inspired enough to want to make a change, that there's something within their reach that they can have access to. And so scaling a meat supply on a national level and offering a variety of different proteins and offering them in a variety of different ways for folks to be able to bring those home and feed their families and communities, to us was the answer to that call, to try to, again, accelerate the movement, accelerate the creation of these supply networks that build virtuous systems. I think some of the biggest challenges that we've faced, which also represent some of the biggest opportunities and reasons to get involved in animal agriculture in particular, largely stem from the commodification of the entire industry, meaning treating living sentient animals as commodity materials to be mined and extracted. This reductionist mindset that has cheapened the food and at the expense of the systems and at the expense of the people involved at all in the production and in the consumption. And so you look at how that system has ingrained in consumers this idea that meat should be cheap. You go into the store and the thing with the most incredible story that has the most sacrifice represented within it should be the cheapest thing in the grocery store. And the thing that is most necessary for your health, that has the most essential nutrients that you need to survive and live the most, best version of yourself and the fullest experience of life should be the cheapest. And the reality is we've traded off value in that pursuit. And it's difficult to have that conversation and to help consumers understand that this is a place where that we should be investing our dollars. This is a place that we should be investing in value and making sure that we're getting the best version of it, because it's the most essential thing that we can get out of a grocery store. In the baby boomer generation, there began to be a better life through chemistry, right? This idea that we could beat nature and do things that would improve the human experience beyond what we might have historically been exposed to. And so we started hyper-processing things, creating convenient foods, building brands in the grocery stores, and so on and so forth. And then, I think in later generations, probably X and millennial generations, there started to be this reversal where we realized how detached and how removed from the food system we've become, and how much we've lost touch with a natural reality that we should be in relationship to land, and we should have relationships with our food, and started to see claims and things show up on packages, on boxes, natural, better for you, paleo more recently, and on down the list. And I think that food movement to connect, consumers back to the sourcing, back to the values behind the sort of food that they're eating and cooking with and nourishing their families with, kind of had permeated into the perimeter of the store, spilled over into the perimeter of the store, back into fruits and vegetables and dairy items. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to help accelerate, is that resurgence with meat, connecting back to the land, having a relationship. Meat doesn't come from styrofoam packages wrapped in cellophane plastic from a grocery store. Meat comes from animals that had important lives and had important roles to play on the land and had a lived experience that we should be celebrating and honoring. And regenerative agriculture is the way to allow those animals to play those important roles and to contribute those key ecosystem services into environments, and to live their fullest, best life where they can exhibit their natural behaviors and be the healthy beings that we want, nourishing ourselves and the world around us. Meat is the foundation of our diet. It's the cornerstone of our plate. It is the reason that we were able to, millions of years ago, evolve from gatherers and trees to go out onto plains and begin to grow our brains and fuel our bodies and develop the intelligence and the systems to become, the apex animals that we are today. When we started Force of Nature, meat was under attack. It was being disparaged as bad for you, or as the reason for a changing environment around us, or the reason for many of the challenges that we're seeing in our society. And the truth couldn't be further from those lies. And so when we say reclaiming the legacy of meat, we mean correcting that story, dispelling those myths, and ensuring that meat is once again celebrated and once again returned to its rightful place, again, at the center of our plate and in the center of our diet. But it's done so in a way that allows it to realize its potential to be a source for good. I always say Force of Nature is focused on creating both awareness and access for the consumer. So having a great call to action is important, but that awareness piece can't be understated. It takes a great deal of education and a great deal of effort to try to reach, a very diverse group of consumers with different messaging, to tell them the right stories. The beautiful thing about regenerative agriculture and what we're trying to do at Force of Nature and telling those stories is that largely what we're presenting consumer with is the manifestation of what they already want or believe they're getting in the food when they go to the grocery store and purchase it. They don't realize how far off of the ideal the conventional and commodity system has gone. And so simply creating awareness and an awakening that, hey, the system is failing you and it's falling short of your existing expectations, but that there is this incredible system out there called regenerative agriculture that delivers on what you're already looking for. Being able to tell that story and create that awareness is, I think, one of the most important things that we do on a daily basis. Meat has been around and available in the grocery store for a long time, and there are plenty of farms and ranches that are practicing regenerative agriculture and doing amazing things. And it's been really difficult for them to reach consumers with their story. And they deserve to be celebrated, and their story deserves to be told, and consumers deserve to have access to those products. And that exists for every community across the country and across the world, where there is likely the right candidate looking for a set of products that hasn't been made available to them for a variety of reasons. And on the other side of that consumer is a food grower and a food producer and a rancher who has an incredible item or wants to produce an incredible item but doesn't have access to a consumer that's willing to reward them for making the change that they're already eager and desiring to make or may have already made for their own reasons. And so, Force of Nature is intentionally not trying to displace any farms or ranches or the often forgot food processors and the folks who actually, package, meat in the process. There's incredible people that deserve to be celebrated in all parts of that food supply and that supply chain. And so our job isn't to do anything other than find the best growers, find the best ranchers, find the best producers and land managers that we can find and work with, and begin to pass that product through to a consumer who's excited about it and pass the reward back to the rancher. So again, create a regenerative supply network that rewards consumers, that rewards producers, and that spins off positive outcomes for everybody in between. I don't think the average consumer realizes just how powerful they are in changing and influencing the food system. It isn't like going to the polls to vote for a political candidate where you can be frustrated by the options you're presented with and throw your hands up and abstain. You're voting because you're consuming. If you're eating, if you're buying, if you're wearing clothes, if you're doing anything that involves a cash register, you're voting. And that data is being obsessively organized and cataloged and analyzed by varying players and interests at all different levels of the economy and of the food system. There's no hiding from participation. And whether a good actor or a bad actor, nobody is going to make a product that a consumer is not going to buy. And if they start looking at the data and it shows a shift in demand that consumers are moving away from something, or more importantly, toward something else, it's going to have an impact. And so, I think you can look at the movement towards organic, where that was something that was really non-existent, 30 or so years ago. And now it's represented by the purchasing behavior of something like 80% of households. So you start to see more organic items in the world, more organic items supplied, carrying the claim, and so on and so forth. And so, that's like a very simple example for, this regenerative movement to be able to point to and say, yeah, it doesn't take very long to really get your message out there and reach the masses. To somebody that thinks Force of Nature is too expensive, I'd really want to have a longer dialogue with them, but I would ask them what they think the most nutrient-dense, essential food that they eat should cost, maybe relative to a bag of potato chips. And see where they thought that on a price per ounce, those things should exist in parity. Because I think they'd be surprised that when they go find a bunch of cheap items at the grocery store, that everything that they will see on that candy shelf is more expensive than Force of Nature meat. And yet it's not offering them all of the nutrition that they need for themselves and their family to thrive. Instead, it's robbing them of their health. And they perceive it as cheap because of how they are conditioned to think, or because of the size of that offering. This is where you should be investing your money. The United States spends about 6.5% of its discretionary income on food. Places that we marvel after in Europe, like Italy and France, spend double that. We spend less on the fundamental ingredient of life, the thing that will give us increased health span and improve our fulfillment and our quality of life. We spend less on that nourishing ingredient of life than we ever have at any point in time or any other nation ever does. So I would say this is directly where we should be investing our limited dollars. And we should be really proud of where we're putting it. And this should be the best example of where we're trading up for value. When we started Force of Nature, we were faking it till we make it. We didn't really have any product or production in place necessarily. We just had a vision and an idea. And to look back, this many years later, and to see that we're working with hundreds of different ranching operations that are employing thousands of different people, practicing regenerative agriculture on the land, creating hope in their communities, lifting up the spirits and serving as a model to their neighbors. Again, a beacon of hope in communities where hope has been lost and the existing system has been failing them. And then to look at the other side and go all the way straight through to the consumer and to look at the fan mail that we receive and recognize that in just 1 year, we were able to serve over 12 million meals that were nourishing and fulfilling and inspiring, that people tell us in their own words were impactful in changing their lives and giving them hope and impacting the way that they engage with their children and their parents and so on. That is so exciting because I know where we started, which was, prior to the first step with nothing. And I look at how far we have to go, and I look at, in our prior company, we had a legacy goal of impacting 1 million acres. And now with just Force of Nature alone, we've almost impacted 2 million acres. And I recognize, we have this broader goal, not just for Force of Nature, but for the regenerative agriculture movement at large to reach 1 billion acres of agriculture. That would be 10% of the agriculture on the planet. I think that we're on that trajectory. I think, again, we're early in the movement. We can't expect to be tomorrow where we're supposed to be today, but we're moving in the right direction, and it's resonating on the front lines with our food producing communities, and it's resonating with consumers and where and how they shop and what they want to introduce into their families and their communities. And it fills me with hope and enthusiasm and fuels me and fires me up to fight on to keep at it, because I can see the change happening at an accelerating rate. When I think of a legacy I want to leave behind, I think it's one where farmers and ranchers are still on the land that they've been on for generations, producing food for communities of people. I want humans in our food system, and I want that food to truly be the best and most nutrient-rich, honest, real food, most consistent with what we would have evolved through the millennia ourselves to receive. I don't want Franken foods and processed foods to be the cornerstone of our diet, but real foods coming from real people, making real sacrifices with real passion for what they do. And I think that system is what got us to where we are. It's what has powered humans through the ages, and we've only lost touch with that over the last generation or two. And it's not too late to turn back. The opportunity is there, and we're working hard to correct the course that we're on. And I think that should be a message of hope for anybody. And for me, if the legacy can be seeing hope manifest for the people that make food and for the people that consume food being rewarded with the quality they deserve, that's legacy enough.
Mm.